I had a very difficult time adjusting to being a stay-at-home mom. Here I had this little newborn that I loved so deeply. I couldn't imagine being away from her, and yet my days felt stressful. I felt stressed, always feeling like I never got enough done. I always needed to do more and be more, feeling extremely bored and both overwhelmed at the exact same time. What I came to realize was that a lot of the choices I was making, the lies I was believing, and the baggage I brought into motherhood was actually creating the opposite of what I wanted. I wanted to be able to enjoy my time with her, to really relish in the slowness of our days. But what I actually felt was deep discontentment. This is the very honest, hopefully encouraging story of a former overachieving, hyper-driven woman and how she learned not just to be content, but truly thrive and fall in love with the ordinary, mundane days as a full-time stay-at-home mom. If you're new here, I'm Jess, and I am passionate about helping women cultivate contentment exactly where they are, especially in motherhood. Here are 5 mindset shifts, things I did that radically altered my life as a mom and allowed me not to just cultivate contentment in this new season of life as a stay-at-home mom, but truly fall in love with motherhood. The first mindset shift that was incredibly important to make was I had to realize that my motherhood was not a blank slate, and that I was actually bringing in a ton of old narratives, old hurts, old wounds that were massively impacting the way that I saw motherhood and the way I was, therefore, experiencing motherhood. Logically, in my head, knew that the work of motherhood is valuable, it is good, and yet, much to my shame, I was battling lies deep down that were inadvertently creating a lot of tension, discontentment, and disappointment. Lies that said becoming a mom means the best of your life is over, or that it's wasting potential to stay at home, that my value was somehow less because I wasn't producing something of monetary value, even though the value I was contributing in nurturing her was critical. The truth is that these are lies and affect us whether we're full-time at home or we're working moms. Ultimately, a lot of us carry these from our relationship with our own moms, conversations we had growing up, the way that media portrays motherhood, things that we have picked up from our life and our life experiences inadvertently kind of pour into our own motherhood. And often, many of us are not even aware of them until we become a mom, and boom, all of that stuff is just right there at the surface. Either way, when we are coming in with these old narratives, these lies we believe about motherhood, there is no joy there. It sucks the delight out of being a mom. It did for me. It can either mean that we overcompensate by hyperfixating on all the things we can produce as a mom and all the best mom we can be and all the things that we cook and what the house looks like and all the events we go to, or it means we feel like it's a demotion, so we kind of subvert to laziness and think, well, I'm home with the kids, like that's good enough. And we don't put a lot of effort into our relationship or parenting or the way that we take care of our home. Think about yourself as a kid. Did you feel from your mom that she loved being your mom? She loved spending time with you? Did you feel like you had to produce certain things to earn your parents' love? Were you met with a lot of irritability and impatience, like you existing just felt like a burden to them? I think about this a lot because I've had so many conversations with people where their relationships, what they witness from their own parents, drastically impacts what they think of themselves as a parent and how they parent their kids. Because those wounds, they cut deep. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be wounds from your parents. It could be lies you absorb from society, media, whatever it is about what being a mom means. Because the truth is, whether we realize it or not, we carry that into adulthood. And it does affect the way that we parent our kids. And this is not about staying in a victimhood to what we experienced as a child and letting that dictate all of our decisions. And it's also not the other extreme, which is completely ignoring those things and thinking that they don't affect you at all. To me, it's about bringing intention and awareness to those things so that they are not unknowingly controlling your relationship with your motherhood and how you are showing up in your life. I used to feel ashamed that I dealt with the conflicts of, missing my old life. It's actually very broken thinking to expect that my love for my child would magically fix all of the old lies and baggage that I carried into this. It would be like me going into marriage with my husband and thinking, well, I have this man who loves me, is gonna fix all my old wounds, is gonna fix all my problems because I have this man's love. That's actually kind of a recipe for codependence. It is not a lack of love I was experiencing for my daughter. An undercurrent in my life of anxiety that was saying, you should be more, you need to do more all the time. Not only was it completely stealing the joy from my motherhood, it was stealing my presence, it was stealing my ability to truly be with her. It was infinitely more exhausting and draining than any sleep deprivation that I had. And I can say that confidently because let me tell y'all, my daughter is a party animal, okay? It has been 3 years, I've never slept through the night, and I can still confidently say that the shame that I was feeling, the expectations I was placing, the lies, the narratives I was feeling, that was infinitely more draining and exhausting than the sleep deprivation that I felt. It can feel overwhelming when we're thinking about diving into these things. Simple resource to get started. It is one of my favorite books by one of my favorite authors on this topic, by Dr. Dan Siegel. He wrote a book called Parenting from the Inside Out, and I found it to be incredibly helpful. The second thing I did that allowed me to truly thrive in my life as a mom was rejecting all that bounce back culture had to offer and choosing to embrace radical change. In my head, it was like the pinnacle of motherhood would be that you had a kid, but nothing really changed. And I think a lot of this has to do with bounce back culture. Magazines talking about celebrities that have had kids, whether it's compliments that you hear women give moms. Oh my gosh, you don't even look like you had a baby. Wow, you're back to work. She's doing all this. She just popped out a kid and she just got back to normal life like nothing was up. Like, that's amazing. She's super mom. What this leads to is a culture of women, me included, who really struggle with completely rejecting the change that is offered to us from maiden, like that season of our life, into motherhood. And a lot of us in motherhood feel like this. We reject the change, we're anxious and angry about the change, and we are desperately trying to still fit our new self into our old self. Think about it this way. When a young girl goes through puberty, and her body changes, her desires change, what she's interested in changes. She's not necessarily interested in the things of a child. She's ready and wanting to kind of step into this mature role as a woman. Everything about her is changing. Would I ever go up to a young girl like that and say, oh, that's a bummer that your body doesn't look like it did when you were 10, 11, or that you don't want to go play on the monkey bars all day? No, we would never do that because we recognize that the change that she's going through is critical, it's important, and she should look different. The same thing I believe goes for when we enter into motherhood, that in other cultures, they often are demarcated as a new entrance into a new season of life. It's celebrated, it's talked about. In Western culture, or at least the way what I'm seeing, that is not the case at all. So what ends up happening is we see the change, like we see the loss of that old self, but we have no basis of understanding as to what we're moving toward and the beauty and the amazing things that are here to experience in motherhood. Everyone's obsessed with going backwards. And so then naturally you have an entire generation of women who just feel grief. Instead of seeing motherhood for all of the beautiful new things we could be stepping into, we only see what we're losing. It's not about downgrading the hardness of motherhood. When I let go, like really surrendered, not just of life before motherhood, but some of the things I was trying to hold on to, I asked myself, why? The pace of life I was trying to maintain, what did that ever do to me? I was a chronic overachiever that was so severely burnt out. All I knew was that producing things equated to my worth. I had an opportunity in motherhood to learn a new pace of life, a slowness that now, years later, I'm looking back and I'm going, what a gift. I mean, truly a blessing in my life. I'm physically healthier. My nervous system is healthier. I have experienced more presence and joy than I ever have in my entire life. My relationships with the people around me, my walk with the Lord, everything is more rich and intimate. Becoming a mom, this is an invitation to me, and I could choose to sit here and just resent all of the change, or I could step into this complete new season of my life and all that it's inviting me into. The third mindset shift that I think is very helpful, similar to other jobs, there is a learning curve and it is a skill just like with anything else. Loving your kid is not a substitute for learning and growing. I think a lot of women become a mom, and if you're like me, you think, well, I love this baby. I want to be with this baby. So everything else should be easy because I love my kid. And also, if you're like me, you will find that that is not the case. Let's say you were working in an office job and you stepped into a new job or a new role, you would not expect to just be in a rhythm and a swing of things. The first week, even the first month, you would know there was a lot of adjustments to make. You would need to learn a lot of things. You need to find your own rhythm. You need to figure out time management and the skills you'd need for that job. Talk about having a toddler, practicing the skill of not being reactive when I'm parenting her, being able to hold space for her really big emotions. That's a skill to me. That's not something that I was just born with and equipped to do, I'll tell you that much. Like, I am learning and I am growing on the job, and that is okay. Recognizing that in my own life has allowed for a lot more grace and for me to stop equating things with my worth. The last thing I did that was incredibly helpful for helping me just relish and love where I am as a mom was I stopped abandoning delight. I wanted my daughter to know that I loved her and I loved spending time with her and I delighted in her. It was like a delight to be with her. That doesn't mean that it was easy to be with her all the time. I knew that there was a difference between saying that that was the truth versus how I was acting. And I said that I loved being with her and that I loved being her mom, but then in my day-to-day life and in my day-to-day interactions with her, I was more irritable. And the message she was getting was out of alignment with what I wanted her to get. So I stopped looking at delight as something that was optional. I've always been someone that really struggled with cultivating delight. I took myself way too seriously. I was a very hyper-productive person. And having a kid has really invited me into doing that, not just for her, but for me and for our days together. Highly prioritize being out in creation so we can be in awe of all that God has made, and we look at the trees and the birds and playing music when we're in the bath and having sing-alongs. There have been a couple things that were really important to me to be able to cultivate that delight and to focus on having fun in the day-to-day of motherhood, and one of them has been slowing down. As much as I can, I arrange our schedule and our life and minimize commitments in a way that she does not feel rushed all the time, and I do not feel rushed all the time. A slower pace of life has enabled more space for delight and joy for both of us as we go through our day. And the other thing that has enabled for more delight and joy has been learning to meet my needs with her, with me. I think we've all seen those videos, like that mom on the treadmill and it's like trying to meet all my needs in the 1 hour after bedtime, and she's on the treadmill and she has a face mask on and a hair mask and she's like listening to a podcast and she's walking. We all can relate to that. I remember falling into the trap of thinking that I only meet my needs when my daughter is asleep. It creates this like mad rush when your child is sleeping to, to shower, to poop alone, to eat, to do all these things, like get your workout. I mean, it's not sustainable, but also I feel like it's extra not sustainable when you talk about having multiple kids. And so learning the skill, because I do think it is a skill and it requires practice, of doing things and meeting my needs with her has allowed me to feel a lot more at ease in my motherhood journey. So this looks like not waiting to eat until she naps, prioritizes making a meal for mommy and making sure not just for me so that I am well fed and nourished, so that I have the physical energy to care for her, to be there for her. She works out with me twice a week. We're in our garage. I have activities for her. It's definitely not the same as before. It takes longer. I take breaks to play with her, but that's the thing is we're both together. I'm enjoying meeting my need, doing something that I love. She's watching me do that. She's watching me take care of myself. It is not a stressful process, because what ended up happening in my early motherhood journey, a situation like my 6-month-old skipping a nap, which is a very normal situation, becomes this huge thing because now it's, well, now I can't do this. And now my needs aren't met. And now I'm frustrated because I'm exhausted and I'm hungry and I haven't pooped alone and XYZ. When we have so many expectations and we're holding on to things like this, it creates so many more inflammatory instances. Of course, alone time is really great. It is nice to have, but sometimes in certain seasons, it's not accessible. And so as a mom, learning to meet your needs while in the presence of your kids, making them accessible to you in whatever way you can, has for me gone leaps and bounds into me stepping into and enjoying my life as a mom. So many of us come into motherhood playing a role of what we think being a mom looks like. It could be based on the mom that you had, it could be based on media, it could be based on old lies. I think it's helpful to ask ourselves, what kind of mom do you want to be? What do you want your days to look like with your kids? How do you want your kids to feel in your presence? Recognizing that you can step into a new kind of motherhood in your life is such freedom. I make videos on all things minimalism, slow living, and intentional motherhood. If you're into that, I'd love to see you join our community. I will see you in the next video.